Just checking the studio today. I want to talk a little about some stuff that's going on in the labor world. Specifically, really, there's a couple things going down. First off, in the city of New Orleans, we had a really big tragedy. We talked a little bit about it with Scott on our Tuesday show. There was a tragedy that took place at the Hard Rock Hotel in New Orleans. There was a big piece of the building, really almost like part that was connected. There were cranes and all these various bits of the construction, the whole apparatus put together, and it fell down off of the city. Off the building, and landed on the streets of New Orleans, and there were several injured workers, 3 dead. Many were missing for an extremely long time, and it's hard to tell if some other folks that were not accounted for. But as far as we know right now, three people are dead, and there's about 18 or so, maybe 20 or so, who were injured. Well, as of release of this episode, the night of, there's going to be a vigil taking place to be put together by the Step Up Louisiana, which is a local community organizing group. They're doing it in collaboration with the New Orleans building trades. So a lot of the painters unions, the carpenters, the sprinkler fitters, the plumbers, all these folks, the laborers, they're all going to be out there to sort of remember the fallen lives of the workers that died in this this incident where part of the giant part of a building just collapsed and crushed them to death or injured them very seriously. So if you're in the area, we hope to see you out there. It's going to be at City Hall at 6 o'clock Central Time. There's not really much that I want to say about that. We kind of jumped on a lot of it on Tuesday, but if you have the opportunity, go on out there and join in, show your solidarity, show that you're out for the workers. So moving on from that really quickly, there looks to be in the UAW worker situation with GM. So for those of you who may not know, the workers at General Motors have been out on strike for 31 days. So myself and some folks from New Orleans Democratic Socialist of America went out this past week to show some solidarity with those folks. And it was really interesting. It was really great to see the folks out there. They had no idea when there would be a solution to this impasse. There was a lot of things going on. At one point, the company, General Motors, decided that it wasn't going to continue giving the health care to the workers that were on strike, which is generally the case, is that they would keep their insurance, but they were cut off shortly, and then it was reinstated. There was a whole lot of stuff going on with this strike, and it looks like, and there's no real details about what the terms are, but it looks like there is a tentative agreement between the UAW workers, or the UAW management, at least, a tentative agreement between the UAW and General Motors management. So there, as of this afternoon, when I last looked at the news, there would needed to be, and I talked to a contact of mine as well. They had to be approval from a couple of committees within United Auto Workers. I think there were two more as of about 5 o'clock today, and this we're being recorded on Wednesday. And then also there needed to be a vote by the membership to either approve or reject this contract. So it's hard to tell if this is a victory or a concession or by who or what or whatever. But it looks that if this deal gets voted through, the people who are out of work for 31 days, who are making $250 a week without side jobs, are going to be going back to work. Hopefully with much better working conditions, better pay, more equal pay for all of the workers that are involved. That would be a wonderful situation. So stay tuned for that. It's been a long time. It's been a month. I couldn't imagine that being not working for a month and not getting paid. That's something that's really really remarkable. So shout out to the GM workers. Let's make this a good contract, and if it's not, well, hopefully they'll. Well, I don't want to go there yet. Let's just hope that it's a good contract for the workers. Shout out to Local 2402, who we visited last week in Brandon, Mississippi, just outside of Jackson. Met some really cool folks out there, as I mentioned earlier. So, holler at y'all. Y'all keep it cool, and yeah. So, I know we're going a little bit fast here, but those are just a couple quick stories. I really wanted to focus in on this strike that's happening out in Chicago, the teacher strike. So there's 25,000 members in the Chicago Teachers Union. And they're saying now, and this has been led up to for quite some time, as they have not had a contract most of this school year. But the Chicago Teachers Union is walking out tomorrow. The Delegate Assembly voted just tonight, as of the Wednesday, that it's on. The strike is on for Thursday. So the last time that the full complement of Chicago teachers went out on strike, and this is also with us SEIU local as well, the service workers, they are walking out as of tomorrow. That's the first day of strike. So that's very exciting as well. Chicago teachers are famously have once again I said they went on strike in 2012. They have been fierce advocates for themselves and for their children. They have developed a plan called the schools our children deserve, and it lays a full program for social economic justice for the children and workplace justice for the school workers. And they recently revised that plan not long before, probably about a year ago, in the run-up to this strike. And it's going to happen again. And solidarity with those workers as well, the Chicago Teachers Union and SEIU workers as well, service workers, include bus drivers and meal workers, custodial staff. So this is really, there's 7,000 support staff workers and 25,000 teachers, and also the Chicago School District is a very large district. It's 300,000 students will not be served in the coming days or potentially weeks as the strike rolls on. There have been in an impasse in negotiations once again with the Chicago School District. Lori Lightfoot, the mayor of New York, the newly minted mayor of New York. She said that class will not be canceled, and she wants to give parents more time to plan. I wonder who's going to be staffing these schools if there's, that they're going to still be open. That's sort of shocking. That's really a tough. It's hard to say. And if I know Chicago, I know that there will not be people out there, there will not be people scabbing. Chicago Teachers Union is a very well organized machine. They know what's going on in terms of keeping their folks on side. So here we go again. Strikewave rolls on. This is in light of the strikes that took place in the spring of 2019. Famously, the Los Angeles teachers, United Teachers Los Angeles is the union. They walked out this spring, as did Denver and Oakland. So this is a strike wave, folks, because before that, prior to the Los Angeles teachers and school workers walking out, we also had the red state strikes of 2017. West Virginia, Oklahoma, Arizona, all three of the statewide strikes that took place. And so this is, again, for 2 years running and counting, considering the auto teachers and those red states that we mentioned earlier, the auto workers. This is a real life strike wave. So we're in the middle of it, in the thick of it, and if you get the opportunity, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, step up and show your support for Chicago teachers. It doesn't take much to, send an email or post on your social media. You know how they have those little frame things that you can put on on your picture. It's a little silly, but I usually do one of those. I don't know. I'm actually going to meet myself and a couple folks from the New Orleans Democratic Socialists of America will be making the trip up to Chicago as of Friday morning. I booked my flight just the other day, but we're going to be going up there and joining the strike. Seeing folks online, there were some folks from the Chicago City Democratic Socialists of America who have been really cool about helping us plan lodging for the night. They have a whole network designed to help see some folks and to plan some folks, and it's going to be very exciting. I'm looking very much forward to it. I'm going to bring my portable recorder and try and get some sound on the ground to hopefully include into a future episode of Good Morning Comrade, just so that y'all have access to some on the ground sound. So I'm not only going to be showing solidarity, I'm going to do a little bit of cub reporting, which is pretty exciting. So anyway, just to zoom in a little bit on the teacher strike, you can always find really good information about what's going on. I found that Chicago Teachers Union's webpage actually has the most update information, and it's the most clear on what the Chicago teachers' demands are. So that's probably the best place you can go to check out and get more information. But anyway, just to talk a little bit about what the Chicago teachers want in this strike, it's 4 very simple things. Well, 4 things plus. But the big things that they stay, and this is directly from, like I said, the CTU website. Better pay and benefits. Chicago Public Schools needs to stop shortchanging the people who make their schools work. Chicago Teachers Union will not accept excuses for continued neglect of teacher, clinician, and PSRP pay and benefits. PSRPs are support personnel. That means paraeducators or clerical staff or anybody else that works in the school that's not a teacher typically. So essentially what they're saying is we're not being paid well enough to do this job, and also we're not getting the correct benefits. I know specifically paraprofessionals, clerical staff, and custodial staff in New Orleans for sure make absolutely unacceptable amounts of money. The parent that's in my class has been doing that job that she's been doing for probably about 17 years, and they're in the pay schedule that we have for paraprofessionals. They actually get a small increase every year that they're in the system. So there's, I believe, a $300 or $400 increase per year as for the for every year experience that you have. However, it's about half of what teachers make, and the scale stops. It sort of tops out at 15 years. So the last 2 years, the para in my classroom, one of them, like I said, created a job. She's been doing this for a very long time. She's not gotten even a cost of living wage, which amounts to essentially a pay decrease, because with inflation, the money gets less valuable every year, and as that happens, that means that if you don't get more money, then you're getting less money. If you don't even get the amount that would, excuse me, that would be make up for what the price of the value of money goes down, then you're effectively taking a pay cut. They're also they say they stand for fully staffed schools. We will not tolerate the continued elimination of essential positions. Librarians comes to mind immediately when it comes to this. Most schools will, especially charter schools, I find, but more and more as school systems and education turns towards standardized testing, we have been taking out art teachers. We've been taking out librarians. We've been taking out music teachers. That's becoming less and less a part of the education system because the arts and literature are less valued in the way the system's structured. It's all about answering questions based off of a text or 2 or 3 about 5 or 6 paragraphs, or maybe sometimes 10 paragraphs. Reading passages and then answering questions based off of those, not novels, not literature, there's no self-direction in this learning. It's very, very, very top-down and prescribed. And again, the arts, the music, all that good stuff is de-emphasized. So that's essential personnel. So we'll fight for staffing commitments and good working conditions in all the areas that impact children's learning. Also, the next thing is smaller class sizes. All students will need individual attention from their teachers. We cannot provide that level of attention where we have more than 40 students in a kindergarten or any other class. That's just common sense. You have the more kids you have, the less time you can spend with any of them. You can't. It's much more difficult to teach to 40 kids than it is to teach to 10 or 12 kids. It's just simple ratios in math. And Chicago teachers have been very good about fighting back against this, but class size also does reflect on how teachers perform on these evaluation systems that they're forced to comply with. Um, and the more kids that are in that class, the more difficult it is to do better on that, despite even if you reject, as I do, the entire um, framework of those teacher evaluations are really it's hard to measure education in by any measure, qualitative or quantitative. Um, but that's the system that we have right now. Just measure, measure, measure. Measure, reteach, measure, reteach. That's what we're focusing on, just because that's how the money is distributed. And then finally, justice for students and families. Student learning also depends on what happens outside the classroom. Chicago Teachers Union fights for social justice in the areas of affordable housing, sanctuary schools, sustainable community schools, and restorative justice. So, again, it's hard to learn when you don't have when you don't have housing. It's sanctuary schools are safe places for migrant families or people who are might not have status in the U.S. Schools should be safe places to learn. In the world where people are frequently criminalized just for the fact that for where they were born and whether or not they have immigration status in the U.S., the sanctuary schools are absolutely necessary until we can move beyond that horrible framework. Community schools, communities that are run by community, as opposed to an outside, as opposed to a place that is not there. So essentially, they can be a place that can be a center of the community, and also restorative justice, ways to make solutions to problems, social issues that, say for example, two kids get into a fight, instead of just punishment as the solution. There are ways to sort of make things better by social communication, and that would be the basis for how justice is dispensed rather than just punitive. So there's a lot of issues that are present on here. I mean, I'm just looking right through it. Special education supports hiring more case managers and special education teachers, as well as more prep time to create better inclusion and more co-teaching. This is really important. That's Chicago Teachers Union's position. It's really difficult, I find, that as a special education teacher myself, I'm often expected to be working with multiple grade levels simultaneously for very long periods of the day. The expectations for testing and for what they're to be doing in the classroom is frequently also to be teaching and working with them at their grade level, as opposed to their where they're functioning at, which means that obviously you have to make modifications and whatnot, but it's very difficult to do that when you're being told multiple things. Reach teacher evaluations. Chicago's teacher CTU supports more procedural transparency, reduced workload, and no value added model and a better appeals process. That's actually a less strong position than I thought it would be. It's sort of a little bit measured. Definitely no value added model. That's a value added model is a metric, I suppose you would call it, that purports to calculate the value that a teacher adds to a child in terms of their again quantitative performance in education. It's a completely inappropriate metric, and it's sort of very mystified and viewed as sort of a crystal ball for whether or not a teacher's good. Certainly a reduced workload. There's a lot of paperwork that comes along with these evaluation processes, and more procedural transparency, more the fact that you can see what's happening. Yeah. Testing paperwork and lesson plans. So CTU supports educator autonomy and a stipend to complete extra paperwork, because there is always extra paperwork. There's just stuff all the time that just comes down, and they're like, the administration's like, well, this is the thing you got to do now. To continue to read, the Chicago's Teachers Union also says to focus on culturally relevant curriculum instead of testing. Stop network mandates, yes, top-down education and mandated testing, and no more school performance score rankings. Yes, please. Ranking schools is incredibly problematic, to use the problematic word, problematic. The thing that you can, so school performance scores are very closely correlated, not perfectly, but closely correlated to the socioeconomic status of that area. So, as I was saying earlier, people who have more resources, children, or their families who have more resources have closely correlated better outcomes in their school performance scores. That's definitely because children from lower socioeconomic areas face more precarity, and when your needs are not met, then it's very difficult, just based on a Maslow's hierarchy perspective, to learn or test or do well or anything, especially in the metrics that are used. The supportable housing issue is really, I like this one. It's interesting because it's become kind of a controversial demand that Chicago Public Schools has sort of cried foul against Chicago Teachers Union, because they're only supposed to bargain for relevant things that are like relevant to education. And the case that CPS is making is that they want Chicago Teachers Union is making is that they want Chicago Public Schools to declare support for expansion of affordable housing for educators, students, and parents. And the reason is that, connected to what I was talking about before in terms of the school rankings, if children if children and their families don't have housing, it's impossible to learn, or it's much more difficult to learn, for the very least. The very simple calculus that CTU is making, Chicago Teachers Union is making, is that they want housing to be affordable it's not even free housing, it's affordable housing, which I would be in favor of the former, the free housing. And then finally, charter schools. Charter schools are a part of this, as they are everywhere. Everywhere. Charter schools are popping up like mushrooms. So Chicago Teachers Union supports continuing the moratorium on the expansion of charter schools in Chicago. There has been a moratorium on charter schools. It means that they've stopped having charter schools. They stopped making new charter schools, rather. The ones that currently exist, they can stay. Charter schools erode the power of unions. You need to negotiate with the owner of the charter school, or whoever manages the charter school or that charter school's network, as opposed to one big contract with the school system. That's a problem. And Lori Lightfoot and the Chicago Public Schools want to end that moratorium on charter schools. And now, as someone who lives in New Orleans, and I can see it with my own lying eyes, just how just the impact of public school system. I mean, of a charter school system to public schools. It's just completely, again, just completely flies in the face of what should be going on in the system. It's, again, sort of like a management class or a ruling class coming in and saying that they know how to run schools better than teachers do. And if teachers are in much more precarious positions, especially in Louisiana. I imagine it's, well, I don't want to speak for the situation, but I imagine it's not too different in Chicago. But the expansion of charter schools is certainly alarming, and certainly the project of the wealthy against the working people like you and me. So tomorrow, vigil for the fallen workers at the Hard Rock Hotel. It's very good, absolutely devastating. It's such a sad situation. So many, injured and killed workers, and there was just a report that went out today. Just to bring it back to the beginning, there was a report that went out today from one of the news stations. I can't remember which. They had gotten video of one of the workers inside that was probably about a week before the collapse of the building, and the worker was, shooting video of just how shoddy the construction job was. He showed bent or missing beams that were holding up various sections of the building over on Rampart Street, right next to the Sanger Theater, really right down the street from where Scott works. He works at a pizza place downtown, in the quarter rather. So this is, there's a lot of negligence that seems to have taken place here. We're gonna see what happens as we get more developments. But I'll be at that vigil tomorrow night. 6 o'clock, or it's tonight, the release, 6 o'clock. Join us out there. It's going to be something. And then, Friday I fly out to Chicago. I'm going to meet up with some friends from New Orleans who I haven't seen some time, some folks from Chicago, and some folks from out of town. I know Eric Blanc's going to be up there. He just texted me today. We should, catch up. Maybe we'll do a little sound for that too. But anyway, you can check out all of our shows on WHIV LP New Orleans. GoodMorningComrade.com. You can also check out our page on WHIV LP New Orleans. WHIVFM.org/good-morning-comrade. You can also check out all of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And again, we said it on Tuesday, we'll say it again. Congratulations to Robert and Aaron. They are officially married as of last Saturday. I saw a lot of really great pictures. It was such a cute looking wedding. I really wish I could have gone. Oh, we didn't talk about the debate. I guess we can do that really quickly. I knew I'd gone in intending. I was missing something. There's not really much here. Bernie sort of did the Bernie thing. There was I kind of like enjoyed the spectacle of the debate thing, but I also sort of really hate it. But excuse me. Long story short, Bernie did the Bernie thing. He was fine. There were a couple of things that went his way. He ended up being really good on obviously Medicare for all. He actually was talking about how we should not ignore the pain that working people are facing in the United States, and that's 100% right. A lot of folks have posited the idea, which is very reasonable to me, that working people kind of broke. Some working people broke towards Donald Trump, and it was enough to get him to win in 2016 because he was the only person that was even between him and Hillary Clinton. He was the only one that was even paying lip service to their pain and the demands. They at least would validate what they were feeling, as opposed to calling large parts of the U.S. The American people baskets of deplorables or whatever. That's sort of like where we end up during this whole thing. So the way I see it, most of the time, working people can either break. They would like to break towards a more a society that actually does meet their own needs, that not only pays lip service to its needs, but that is intends on delivering things like Medicare for all, things like work, rights at the workplace democracy. That's Bernie Sanders. I know we've talked about it a lot, but it is truly fantastic. The forgiveness of student debt, the decriminalization of things like marijuana that really are one of the major leading factors of mass incarceration in the United States. We've talked about that quite a bit on this show. You can check out our archives for some of those shows as well. But Bernie's on it. Elizabeth Warren is right there, kind of like at his heels. Bernie had a really great poll just last week. Again, polling, whatever, but he had basically caught up with both Joe Biden, who is bad, and Elizabeth Warren, who is, I don't get too excited about her, but she's not the worst, I suppose. So this is good times. Bernie's back on the campaign trail after his heart attack, and I guess we can close with this. Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib right after the debate on Wednesday night. They all decided that they were going to declare for support for Bernie Sanders in this primary, which is really, really awesome because they're extremely, extremely popular women in the Congress. They've been an absolute challenge to the status quo, the sort of mainline Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, etc. There were a couple of instances where AOC and some of the members of this so-called squad, which includes Tlaib and Omar and Ayanna Pressley, who did not come out for Bernie Sanders, by the way. But they've had some fights, the squad with Nancy Pelosi and the leadership of the Democrats. So this seems to be like another battle line drawn, and those are the good guys, the folks that are actually pushing for real change for working class people, something that we all desperately need. So I guess we can leave on that hopeful note. They're definitely going to provide some kind of a bump for Bernie Sanders, I guess, in the horse race style of a thing or whatever. But in the real long run of it, I mean, this makes it more likely that Bernie Sanders will get more popular running up to this primary in about 3 months in Iowa. So yeah, check us out online, whivfm.org/listen, whivfm.org/good-morning-comrade, goodmorningcomrade.com. Check out the Facebook at Good Morning Comrade, Instagram too. You can also check out Twitter at Comrade Morning. Also, patreon.com/Good Morning Comrade. Check us out. We love to see you. We love to hear you. We love to listen to you. We want to hear your feedback. I actually got some really good feedback from a buddy of mine who says that he's interested in us potentially doing like regular segments, or at least like portioning the show out. I thought that was a really interesting idea. So I'm going to pitch it to the gang and see what they say. What do y'all think? Give us the reviews, 5 stars, like, subscribe, save, and press the bell. All that crap. But really, just keep listening. Check us out on Tuesday, 8 a.m. WHIVFM.org/listen, or in New Orleans, 102.3, Low Power FM. And yeah. Alright, love you folks. Bye.